So today's Medicare topic is going to be compliance, or as I like to call it, surviving the secret shop. Okay. Now, if you didn't know, I'm going to tell you right now that CMS and the carriers both conduct secret shops. And by that, yes, I mean they actually send people out. They'll call you on the phone. They'll even make an appointment. They'll attend your seminars. They'll show up just to hear you and to make sure that you're following all the correct procedures. So this is really kind of our second tier of Medicare training. What you learned in the earlier stuff was, all about A and B and C and med sups and D. But now we're going to talk more about some high-level do's and don'ts. It doesn't matter whether you're face-to-face or over the telephone. So this is primarily for Medicare Advantage and Medicare Part D. Okay, but there's going to be some loose affiliation here with Medicare supplements and CMS, so we'll kind of touch on that as well. I've kind of put this together. I've literally, attended, I would say, more than a dozen a year of the carrier trainings that you go to them on a regular basis. I've done the AHCP year after year, and it's really a lot of the same material over and over again. I'm hoping that I've kind of put it into a different format that will kind of help it kind of sink in a little bit, okay? I don't want to be too redundant, but a lot of this stuff comes up year after year in allegations from customers and in failures of the secret shops. Okay, so we want to keep everybody, we're committed to you, the agent and broker, to keep you well informed and well trained while keeping in good standing with CMS and Medicare. The Medicare carriers. Okay, so why pass it? That secret shop. Well, last thing anybody wants to do is get on the carrier or CMS's radar. So prepare yourself and gain that confidence. Fundamentals of selling compliantly and with integrity. The rules are there for a reason. It's to keep the sleazy brokers away from your customers. And then we'll kind of also look at what happens if you do get an infraction. Okay, if you don't have any, you just haven't been selling Medicare long enough. I can tell you that. I've probably had over the years maybe at least a half dozen allegations. None of them will have ever been founded. So in other words, I was never found guilty of violating any of the rules, but I had several allegations, and I'll go over some of those, and we'll talk about it. Okay. So, like I said, we're dedicated to helping you earn a good living and selling these products. Now, for new brokers and agents, I'll break this down into kind of layman terms. Okay. So the first slew of trainings that we did was really all about Medicare itself. Well, now we're kind of coming at you from the field marketing organization, and we want to make this kind of help make the differentiator here. Okay. So by the end of this training, you should be able to, leverage your personal, professional integrity. You're all business professionals, and relationship selling starts with integrity. So use that integrity along with the understanding of the guidelines, and you'll just become a better agent. By understanding the guidelines and what secret shoppers are looking for and where the infractions start, will prevent you from, failing a secret shop. And finally, you're going to be able to recognize some of these do's and don'ts of selling Medicare. Why pass a secret shop? Like I said, who wants to get on their radar for any of that? So why CMS does it, it makes sense. Think of the market and how easily it can be to manipulate without compliance rules. So passing the AHIP was one thing. But there are agents out there who can get through AHIP and CMS and the carriers, and it's just easier to get through an online test, right? But they will occasionally show up. For those of you who are planning educational and sales events, you can kind of plan on it. Now, I can't stress enough about how much of a change after your first year of selling, as long as you understand what these rules are, and all of it is in the best interest of the client. So follow the carrier's instructions with selling and document everything, okay? If I were to ask you, what can you do to improve your chances of passing a secret shop? Well, that's really kind of a rhetorical question, wouldn't you say? Okay. I would think everybody would say, you just got to stay compliant. Okay, but how do you go about doing that? For most of you, it's doing exactly what you have. You'll find that complying with the rules and regulations will encourage your customers to have confidence in you and the products that you offer. And so focus on doing the right thing for your customer and conducting the entire sales process with integrity. That's really the best place to start. It's important to be aware of certain issues that can significantly affect the outcome of your secret shop. So let's go over some just do's and don'ts. Okay, so this is how to pass that secret shop. So on every marketing appointment, okay, show up on time. Okay, that's got to be one of the special top ones. If you're doing a seminar, okay, and you're not on time, I mean, that's the fastest way to get yourself in trouble with the carrier and with CMS. One of the biggies that comes up all the time is that you got to let the consumer know that even though you're paying a premium or not, and this is not replacing Part B, your Part B premium still must be paid. Unless, of course, it's being paid by the state, but like I said, it must be paid, whether it's you or a third party, right? So that you need to make sure they understand that. A scope of appointment, gotta have that, okay? We'll talk a bit more on scope of appointments later on, but you gotta have one and get it done. The materials that you use, they've got to be approved by CMS. Everything you get from the carrier will be approved by CMS because they will do that for you. If you wanted to develop your own materials, again, you would have to run that through CMS. So I usually don't recommend it. Okay? And it's got to be for the current year. Even if a particular plan didn't change, you can't use yet last year's material to sell the new plan. Okay, so it's got to be the current stuff. And when you do that sales presentation, if you use like the little flip books where it makes sure it has a little picture and it's used for setting in front of a customer, or it's been converted to a PowerPoint, right? Every slide, every page, okay? It had to have been a CMS compliance, that meant it had to have been approved, so you have to cover every page in it. Okay? Shortening it up, as you'll find later on, is going to cause you to fail. And if you get an allegation, it'll come up again. Okay, the word free. Just substitute $0. Now I know that everybody's seen the commercial with Joe Namath, and he's out there saying, it's free, all the different things throughout the commercial. Just remember, Joe is not an agent, so he's not licensed. So he's not going to be held to the same standard that you are. Okay? The other thing is none of us work for the government, so we don't say that. We're not, agents of Medicare or CMS. None of us work for them. We do, however, represent the carrier. We're not employed by the carrier, but we represent the carrier. So we can say that. CMS and Medicare, all they do is approve plans. They recommend nothing. Okay? And those materials that you get from the carrier, you don't write on them. Don't circle things you want to draw attention to. Give the pen to the customer. Let the customer do that. But you will not write on any of that material, okay? Because that will come back and bite you. Okay? Okay. Don't give gifts. Okay. Remember, there's the rule. You can give it, if you do give something, it has to be to everybody. It can't be conditional upon enrolling or anything like that. And it's the retail value, not what you paid for it, but what does it cost. I can easily buy in bulk and get things at a huge discount, but the retail value must be under $15. Okay? No absolute statements. We'll talk more about that, but you're not going to ever say that this is the best, this is the highest rated. It has more providers than any other plan. Those are just don't say those things. They're not true. When you get into making absolutes, don't make absolutes. So learn to qualify your statements. At a seminar, you cannot require anybody to provide their name and contact information. Now, you can have a list. You can say that you can tell people that it's optional, and you can circulate it around. And if they want to sign it, great. Okay? And you'll never present anything that isn't included on your SOA. Okay? So just remember that it's got to be on the SOA, or you can't talk about it. That's why when I do the SOA, I always try to make it as general as possible. Unless that customer, literally stopped me, we were going to talk about everything. Okay. Now, we may find out that the Medicare supplement's too expensive, and they really need to be looking at something that costs a whole lot less. But we would sort that out right away. I don't want to be prohibited from mentioning it, though. Okay, so I want to be able to be as free as possible with that SOA. But if they say all they want to talk about is a prescription drug plan, that's all you can talk about. And if they bring up anything else, you have to tell them that we need to stop. I have to get a new SOA, and you have to sign it because you're asking for something different now. Okay? So don't let them do that. Always try to keep it as broad as possible. Okay? And that goes kind of with it, because if the product is not on the SOA, I cannot talk about it. Okay? So that's what they mean by agreed upon or advertised. If I am doing an educational seminar and that's what I advertise it, I cannot mention companies or premiums or co-pays, nothing. So just remember that. When they say, you cannot use high pressure tactics, they literally at CMS take that one step further. When you enroll somebody and you're doing business over the phone, that enrollment has to be done on an incoming phone call. I cannot call up my customer and enroll them because CMS will determine that that was high pressure regardless, okay? So it has to be on an incoming phone call. And I literally mean, I've done everything. You told me you want to enroll. I'm going to tell the customer right then and there, we need to hang up and I need you to call me back and explain why, because it's a CMS rule, okay? I think it's kind of obvious. We're not going to make inaccurate statements. That's called lying. Okay, so don't do that. And like I said, when you're doing Medicare, you cannot present anything that is not healthcare related. So when I said make that SOA as general as possible, I mean, all I can say on there is a Medicare supplement, a Medicare Advantage plan, a hospital indemnity plan, a vision plan, or a dental plan. I mean, those are all usually included in there, but that's everything that is considered to be healthcare related or Medicare related, right? So it all has to be in there. I cannot bring up or even talk about, final expense insurance. No, I can't even mention it. Okay? So you're always going to identify the product that, at the start of that presentation. So if I was going to be, selling, the Aetna Honor, or I guess that's the Humana Honor Plan, I would be saying this is the Humana Honor Plan, H2510, plan number 4. Okay, I mean, that's specific. You would do that. You're going to tell them what the star rating of the plan is. You're going to go over those eligibility requirements to show that they're eligible to enroll. You're going to explain that, okay, this is, open enrollment. This is when you're allowed to make that, or, this is your initial enrollment. You're going to tell them what enrollment that they're in and what the disenrollment period for that would be. Okay, so if they decide they don't want it after they've already enrolled in it. And when they say explain the premiums, co-insurance, and co-pays, you are literally and figuratively going to pull out the summary of benefits and review every item on it. Okay? So I mean, that is the presentation, the sales presentation is including every page of that summary of benefits. Okay, you're going to go in and talk about, what that network is. If it's an HMO, you're going to make sure that they understand that you have to stay in network, and that if you go out of network for routine care, in other words, non-emergency, the plan will not pay a penny. Okay? If it's a PPO plan, you need to make sure that they understand that costs are less in the network. It'll cover you if you go out of network, but at a higher cost. Okay? Make sure they understand that. And the emergency coverage. You get emergency coverage. Some plans, it's worldwide, but for most plans, it's going to be anywhere in the US and US territories. And it will always be treated as in-network, regardless, okay, if it's an emergency. Yeah, that there's different, the Advantage plans are different from supplement plans. Now while that seems redundant, let me tell you, your customer out there believes that anything that helps with their Medicare is a supplement, okay? Now, we as agents know that that is a particular type of plan. It can be a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan. But remember, to the customer, anything that helps is a supplement. Okay, so be careful with that. If you're selling any of the fee-for-service plans, it's got a whole slew of things that and disclaimers that you have to make sure that you've read to the customer. And it always starts off, if you have Medicaid, there's probably another plan that is more suited to you. Okay? Because Medicaid and fee-for-service, because under the Medicaid, for Medicaid to pay for it, you had to be sending a Medicaid approved doctor, or one of their approved labs where Medicaid has agreed already to pay for it. And under that private fee-for-service, one of the reasons going into those for the customer is that they can see any doctor. So that doctor may or may not be a Medicaid doctor. So they don't go well with Medicaid. And that disclaimer that you're going to read, it's much more than this, but this is kind of a real, almost a synopsis of it, that you're going to explain that when that member goes and visits a provider, that provider must accept and agree to the plan's terms and conditions before the service can be covered every time. Not just, I went in January and now it's, July. You said, did you take it in January? That doctor can, for a non-emergency, say, yeah, but I don't want to do it now. Okay. I mean, they are not bound. Each visit gets that determination. Dual eligible. Okay. So while it does seem to be a little redundant, you need to make sure that the customer understands that they have to have Medicare A and B, and they got to be receiving Medicaid benefits to enroll in the dual D-SNP plan. Now, you got to really watch that because you can easily get Medicaid, and the situation is that Medicaid does nothing more than pay your Part B premium. Okay? And maybe you get extra help to go with it. Okay? But remember, they're not the same program, they're different. Okay? So when I get that dual plan, because having Medicaid pay the Part B premium is considered having Medicaid, but the only people that get the actual full benefit of the dual Medi-Medi are those who have that designation of QMB plus or SLMB plus. So it's got to have that plus because that means plus Medicaid. So you want to make sure that they in order to get that full benefit, that they have full Medicaid status. Because if they don't, you're going to have to explain how that cost sharing works, and it's very unclear. I've even called the carrier to find out how my QMB, but not QMB plus, how does that member, fare in this plan? And you'll find that they can't even explain it. Okay? And that the customer always needs to know that if they were to lose their Medicaid while in the plan, and that hasn't caught up with them yet, so they haven't canceled the plan on them yet, they're going to be responsible for any cost sharing. Okay? And so you also need to explain that disenrollment will happen if they lose their Medicaid status, along with their ability to change quarterly. Okay? I always just tried to make sure that they wanted to make that change, that they knew to call me. Okay? So just keep those kind of things in mind. Chronic plans, right? It's another type of special need, but instead of dual special need, it's the C special need, right? Chronic needs. And you need to go over with them that they've got to have parts A and B. They've got to have one of whatever that qualifying chronic illness is. If you look at the list, there's about 17 different illnesses that there can be a chronic plan for. So let's say your customer has diabetes and they're enrolling in the diabetes SNP plan. Okay? Well, they still have to get a letter. It's a form they fill out, but from the doctor for the plan that says that you have diabetes. They won't take the customer's word for it. It must come from the physician. Okay. So we just need to make them sure that they understand that they need that form from the physician. If you're doing, or discussing prescription drugs, whether it's part of an MA plan or a standalone plan, you need to break these features all down for them. What's the deductible on the plan? You have to explain the deductible. The different tiers of coverage, that can be 1 through 4, 1 through 5, 1 through 6. I mean, it just depends on the plan that you're in and what that is. How it handles the gap, right? There's still a gap. It's based upon what the true value that they've spent in the plan is when they get to the gap, and so that's going to be once they've paid the deductible. And then From there up to 4020, right? $4,020 is where the gap begins. And so from 420 to 6,350 is considered the gap. And that's where, because after you reach the 6,350, that's when the catastrophic kicks in. The different plans will cover the gap differently. Many will have that, what they call a tier 6 drug. So they continue to cover the drug at that copay through the gap. That's what that tier 6 is usually all about. Formularies. Got to find out what they're taking and look them all up. Explain to the customer what their cost is going to be. It helps to know how formularies are built. We talked about that under Part D. Just remember, for every therapeutic category of drugs, there must be 2 in your plan's formulary. And if they're both name brand, 1 must be tier 3. Just because they're expensive, I can't make them tiers 4 and 5. One of them still has to be the preferred drug. Okay. And you got to go into the network stuff. Tell them what pharmacies they can go to, what's in network, what's preferred, what's standard, and what happens if you go out of network. Okay. You need to make sure that they've got a good understanding of all of that. Okay. These are the very common secret shop topics. So you just want to be prepared for this one. Okay. And this way that the scenario goes in the secret shop is that you'll get a phone call, they call up, yeah, do you represent such and such plan? You say, yes, you do, because typically that's how they already know that when they called you. And they'd say, yeah, my mother, I'm helping her with some Medicare questions. Can you look up these drugs and tell me how that plan covers them? And so they'll give you maybe 3 or 4 drugs to look up for them. A couple of them will have these little disclosures on there. It'll say a PA or an ST or a QL, or they'll ask, okay, it's not in the part of the plan, so what's the transition strategy? So they're going to ask you all these questions. And so you want to be sure that if that drug does have one of these designations within the plan, it could be tier 3 and say PA after it, that you explain to them. Yes, but that drug does have require these covered. It's a tier 3. Your cost would be $35. But it has you have to have a prior authorization before the prescription can be filled. Okay. So just make sure that the customer understands that. Like I said, that's a biggie on the secret shops. Okay. Some of the what they call a marketing misrepresentation. Okay, so this is another area of big allegations. Okay, typically they come from misquotations, especially when a customer is hit with an unexplained cost or unexpected cost, right? Because you didn't explain it to them. So that could be the deductible, it could be the copay, that you've misquoted some of the specific benefits in there. Okay. So what that gets down to is like agents that would only discuss a part of the health or drug plan. In other words, they didn't give them the full presentation, or not explaining the required parts of the enrollment. I've had people come back and say, I didn't even know I was enrolling. That's why you have to be very clear that that's what you're doing. You're enrolling in this plan. Not covering the plan's advantages and limitations. So what they mean by that is not going over that summary of benefits. We're not asking you to go over the evidence of coverage. That's like a 90-page document. We're just looking at that the summary, and it's the one that's going to tell you, what all the costs are. Omitting a required piece of information. Maybe you didn't want to go over it because you were afraid they wouldn't buy. That'll just get you in trouble. Obviously, you can't accept an enrollment outside of the qualifying enrollment period. Misstating providers as being in the plan's network. Let me tell you where that comes in. It's like, we'll say that the customer is retiring and they're going to be going into the plan now. And their HMO plan that they're in at work, it's through United Healthcare. Okay, that's who the provider is. And so now I'm looking at selling them the AARP HMO plan in the area. So they understand how the HMO works. We've gone over that already and all of that, but now it's the doctor. And you say, well, who is your primary care doctor? And they say, oh, I have Dr. Smith. I know he's in the plan. I'm seeing him now. Well, what you know is that he accepts the group plan, and that's all you know, right? So just keep that in mind. Those doctors can easily be in the group plan and none of the Medicare plans, or none of the individual plans, right? It's in the group plan. Or it can be in the group plan and accepts the Medicare PPO plan, but not the HMO plan. And I've even seen it accepts the HMO and not the PPO. But anyway, you are literally not only going to look up the doctor, but look up the doctor with that plan associated with the doctor's name and verify that they take that plan. Okay? So if you get caught, saying that they're in network and they're not, you're the one that gets in trouble. Okay? And anything that's questionable, unethical, or unbecoming, I don't even know what to say about that. That's just out there. Okay? When it comes to Medicare supplements, you got to make sure that it's a clear distinction that it's a Medicare supplement, not a Medicare Advantage plan. Okay? Remember, the customer isn't going to necessarily know the difference. And that you always need to make sure that they understand that they have to continue their Part A and Part B. You can't stop them, because the plan itself only pays what's covered by Medicare. So it can cover the Medicare deductibles, co-insurance, and co-pays. But if Medicare doesn't cover it, your supplement isn't going to cover it either. And that just make sure that they understand that caveat in there, that you can see any doctor you want nationwide that accepts Medicare. Okay, so if the doctor doesn't accept Medicare, the plan won't cover them. Okay. So let's look at some real specific examples of the secret shop kind of stuff that comes up. Okay. Okay, star rating. Okay, so here's where this one comes in. Instead of telling them, fully what the plan star rating is, you go down to member satisfaction where it's rated 4.5 stars, and say this is this plan got 4.5 stars in member satisfaction, especially when the overall was 3 stars. Okay, you only deal with the overall plan rating. Okay, don't go by any of the single measures, only the overall. Okay, this one is the you're holding a marketing event, whether it's educational or a specific plan marketing, and you pass out your sign-in sheet. You cannot make it required. It has to be optional. And what CMS wants to see is that, like in the example, that it says optional on the sheet, very conspicuous, right? And so you can, even when it comes to like RSVP for the event and stuff like that, where you're asking for some additional information so that I can, quote, tell them if the event's canceled. No, you really got to be careful with requiring any information. It's all got to be optional for them. Superlatives. We talked about superlatives a little bit. We're going to kind of break that down a little bit. No absolute characterizations. This is the best plan. This is the largest network. Unless you can actually substantiate the what you're saying, right? My favorite is going to be the recommendation is to use among the best or one of the largest. But my favorite is still to use the qualifier in front of it. Based on the prescription list you gave me, this would be the best plan for you. Okay, so I'm not saying it's the best plan. I'm saying that with what you told me, this one would be the best. And that's, a fair thing to say. But I've also put that onus back on them. If you withheld information and didn't tell me about something that you needed or that you were taking, then it's your fault, not mine. Okay. Eligibility. Well, this seems kind of silly that, of course, if they're calling up about the plan and want to enroll in the plan, you'll literally still have to go over this with them. This is the requirements to enroll in this plan. You got to be entitled to Part A and enrolled in Part B. Do you have your A and B? Good, good. This is only good in Smith County. Do you live in Smith County? Oh, good, good. Okay, you got that. Now you do know that you got to continue to pay your Part B premium, even though you have this plan. I just want to make sure you know that. So these are the things that you're going to tell them. And still remaining for the last 3 months of the year here. So if you were to enroll anybody who's going to start in October, November, or December, you're going to question whether or not they've been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. Because if they have, they cannot enroll in the plan, with one exception. It has to be the ESRD chronic plan. Okay? They could enroll in that because they have the chronic condition called out by the plan. But for anybody else to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, ESRD is a no-no. Now, during open enrollment, and we're going to enroll them for 2021, that requirement's gone away. So next year, everybody accepts that. So that's a pre-existing condition that will be allowed next year. Enrollment periods. You literally got to tell them what enrollment period they're in. This is just trying to keep you legal. We're enrolling in the annual enrollment period. Okay, you have a special election period, and then you need to go over what the disenrollment time period would be, or the Medicare Advantage open enrollment, right? So that they could make a change at that time, just so that they understand exactly what the limitations and stuff on there. Okay. Yeah, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but again, you got to thoroughly explain these to the customer. The step therapy, that means you're required to try something that costs less, but is an equally effective drug before they're going to pay for that, even though it's a tier 3, but it could be just a very expensive drug. Okay. So maybe the plan is no longer gonna, that they're moving, they moved or whatever, and where they lived before covered a specific drug, but no plan covers that drug in the new area that they've moved to. So you need to make sure that they understand what that transition process is. So during the first 90 days of that new plan, if something they were already had a prescription for is not on that plan's formulary, they will, by requirements, receive one 30-day supply during that 90-day period. The idea is that instead of forcing them to not have a particular drug, it gives them that 30 days to go see a doctor and find out what else can be taken instead of that drug, so that there is that transition process. And you need to be sure that they understand the exception process. perhaps the drug that they need or that they're taking is not in the formulary, so they can actually go through a process and ask the plan to cover that for them. Okay, and they do this all the time. There's no guarantee, but that's a very common, and it'll usually come in at tier 4, okay, so which is the most expensive category. Or the other one that they can do is it's a tier 4, but it's too expensive that they can't afford the tier 4. And a typical tier 4 is $100 copay. Excuse me. So they can ask that be reduced. Okay. And if you don't explain that, because like I said, that is a classic setup for the secret shop, is to specifically ask about a number of drugs, knowing that they have, these kinds of restrictions on them, either step therapy or prior authorization, and looking for you to say that when you look up the drug. Yes, that drug is covered, but requires step therapy before they'll fill it. Okay, something like that. Okay. So again, I mean, you won't provide any false or misleading information. I always felt that was just kind of, out there. We're not going to lie about anything. We're never going to claim that the plan is recommended or by Medicare. Okay? None of those are going to, we're never going to say that. Okay? They are only approved by Medicare, but Medicare does not recommend or endorse anything. And we've already beat up the word free. Remember, that is $0. Okay. You're never going to lead the beneficiary to believe that you work for any of these government agencies. We talked about superlatives. We're just going to be very careful with how we use those. Like I said, based on what you told me is my favorite. And this one, while it does seem to only make sense, people do it all the time, right? You can't make comparisons between plans unless you put both plan documents in front of the customer. Let's say the person is using the Humana Honor Plan, and I want them to switch over to the AARP Patriot Plan. Both are just MA plans kind of designed around veterans. Okay? Unless I put both plan documents in front of them, I cannot make a comparison. I can't say, oh, this one is much better than the one that you have because of XYZ. I need to have that in writing and in front of them at the same time. We're never going to say that that something is, contracted, that the, excuse me, I'm getting myself a little confused here, but we will be able to say that the plan is approved by Medicare, but we're never going to say that it's, that Medicare wants you to enroll in it, or that, that Medicare has endorsed. It's only in there is approved. And we will use that term, Medicare approved, to describe the benefits. Okay, so just keep that in mind there. Don't get caught saying any of this. The government wants you to join this plan because it helps reduce costs. Government doesn't care. Their cost is pretty much the same whether you stay on original Medicare or if you go to the Medicare Advantage plan. In fact, when somebody signs up for an Advantage plan, the government pays them about $970 a month. Okay, got that? A month. That's the value of that plan for them to cover them. Okay. In addition, the company would receive any premiums that they pay. Okay. So again, we talked about nobody is certified by Medicare. Okay? We did everything through non-government agencies, right? So Medicare did not certify you. Now, you were certified by the carrier to sell the plan, but not by Medicare. And there is not a plan out there that has no limits. There are limits on everything. Your doctor accepts, if your doctor accepts Medicare, she accepts this plan. That's only in the case of the supplement, right? It is not true for an Advantage plan. Got to be part of the network. Okay? And if it's an HMO and they're out of the network, they have to, the plan won't pay anything. Just remember all those little rules for HMOs and PPOs. Better to choose a different company if you're sick. I don't know where that would ever come into play, but don't say that. All plans have some kind of formulary restriction. Nobody covers all the drugs. Okay? And this last one, it's an absolute lie. If you don't like this plan, you can stop paying your premium and return to original Medicare at any time. As much as you may want to say that, you cannot say that because that is not true. So speak the truth, don't mislead, understand the rules. Referrals. Now there's a lot of confusion about referrals, so I'm going to try to straighten that out for you a little bit. Okay. When I do get a referral, I cannot get a phone number and call them up, right? I can mail them literature, and that's about the only thing I can do. I can have my customer give them my business card and ask them to, and hope that they will call me. And then there's even restrictions on when you can do that. If this is a sales presentation, I cannot even ask for that. During the sales presentation, the common practice, and this is what you should get used to, is I'm signing you up for the plan. When we're all done, I give you about 5 or so business cards and tell you, the customer, that you can give these out to your friends if you know if any of them need help, okay, with their Medicare. You cannot ask for names and addresses during the sales process, okay? Now, after you've sold them the plan, my common thing to do was to call you back up. Hey, did that plan material show up? Did you get your cards yet? And sort of, reintroduce myself and talk to them a little bit more. And then give them the who do you know question and collect names and addresses so I can mail them out material. But I cannot ask for names and address during that marketing appointment. Just remember that. Okay, promotional materials. Even though I bought it in bulk and my cost was, $10 an item for something that was retailed at $25, I can't give that out. It's not a $10 item. That retail value is what they go by. Okay, so it has to be less than $15 in retail value. And nor can I give a gift back for a referral. Or I shouldn't say, I can give them a gift, but I can't make that a condition on giving the referral. Okay? So something happened and you didn't pass the secret shop. Okay, so you got engaged in some kind of problem in the process. So here's kind of what happens at that point. And I mean, the plan itself can withhold commissions, require retraining, report misconduct to your state license, or they can terminate the contract that you have with them. Okay. So that's what they can do, but let's talk about what you have to do. Okay. Once the carrier or us are alerted that there's been a CMS infraction, okay, if it's us that are notified, you'll get an email typically from the compliance department, and you literally have a real short period of time. You've got 1 business day to respond to that. Now, it's a form that they're going to send out, and you're going to have to answer every question on the form. If the question doesn't apply, you need to answer the question with does not apply. Okay, so you just expected to get those out right away. If you don't answer right away, you're guilty. Okay, so your response needs to be accurate and factual. Any supporting documentation, maybe things like the SOA and things like that would go with it. If you record it, the recording of the conversation, those kind of things. And then they'll review what you've got and follow up. So here's what I would always recommend. Okay, and it starts off with, when we review doctors, write down in your notes every doctor that you looked up and what their status was, in the network, not in the network. Every prescription that you looked up, you write down whether it was in the formulary, and if so, what tier it was in. Okay? So that you have got all of that, and you want the date that you did all of that, okay? So that you're able to have those notes handy and you can get it back. Okay. Now, my primary recommendation is going to be to record the phone call. I mean, this will absolutely save you more than anything else will, because this has saved me. And I'll give you some examples. These are true life examples that happened to me where somebody filed an allegation. And it is so much easier to respond with a copy of the recording, and in the question that asked about whatever that incident was, we'll say, the complaint is that you told me Dr. Smith was in the network and he wasn't. Okay, so it's so much easier to be able to respond to the allegation with, enclosed is the recording with me and the customer. And at minute 12, I told the customer that Dr. Smith was not in the network, and he agreed to change doctors. Okay, so get a recording application, be able to do that. Android are pretty easy. I know everybody has Apple. I tried Googling that, and I'm not sure that there's anything out there for Apple. So I say good luck. I don't know. Okay, so just be careful with that. Now, let me give you a couple of ones that actually happened to me. I enrolled a customer into an MA only plan. Okay. So the customer claimed that I told her that it had prescription coverage. Okay. So we call up the recording, and the recording has me on there explaining that there's no RX on there. A little background on this one. They were off, I believe it was in the stick somewhere, and there was 2 choices in the area at the time. One was a zero cost MA plan, and the other was an MAPD, and it was like $75. Okay. And the person told me that they couldn't afford the $75 one. So I explained that they didn't cover prescriptions on the $0 one, and then gave them told them about the penalty and all of that, and then also told them about Good RX, if I remember right. And when we got to the pulling up the recordings got me doing that whole explanation on there. Well, it turned out it was a Humana plan, and what had happened, if you've ever done a Humana, one of the signature options is you put the customer on the phone with Humana. Humana's got a recording of a bunch of disclosures, and it's voice interactive. So the recording plays the disclosures, and the customer needs to say like I understand or I agree, and it moves on. And then they at one point at the end it says if you have any questions, like press 1 and the operator will come on and help you with your question. Okay, so they did that and they wound up with Humana customer service, and that's who told them that there was RX coverage in there. So I came out all right, so it was no problem for me because I had the recording of me telling her that there wasn't any coverage. Okay. The other one was very similar to that. I had a phone call of come in. They said that they were looking for a Medicare Advantage plan that had transportation. Okay. So that was the stipulation. We wanted a plan with transportation. They were currently on original Medicare, but it was an enrollment opportunity for them. So I go through all the plans. I find that there is one with transportation, and we look it up, and we go to look up the doctor. Their doctor does not take that plan. That was the only one in their area that had that transportation benefit. So they would have to change doctors if they took that plan. Well, in that discussion over changing doctors, the customer told me, no, I need a plan that's got to have that doctor in the network. So we move on to a plan what we can find that does have the doctor in the network. However, it did not have transportation. So we have the discussion over, yes, your doctor's in the network, but now the plan doesn't have any transportation. Explain to them that I cannot find any plan with transportation that would include your doctor. Well, they said, okay. They still needed a plan, and they'll take the one that had their doctor in it, and then immediately filed a complaint telling them that I said that they had transportation. Of course, everything was recorded, so I just gave them that recording that showed them that the customer was not telling the truth. So I say get the phone recording. For those who have been doing selling for a while, you can literally tell when the customer stops listening to you, okay? Especially when you're going through all of those required disclosures and required statements. The customer can easily claim that you never told them that. So that's why I recommend the recording. And I would have to admit, sometimes I saved stuff for that time period when I knew they weren't listening anymore, but I wanted the recording to show that I did tell them. Okay. So anyway, so moving on here, let's kind of wrap it up. Let's see what's going on. Advance doesn't seem to want to advance anymore. Next slide here. Okay, so follow the sales process. It's going to save you. It's going to make sure that you do everything and review everything like you're supposed to. The most valuable tool you have is just doing the right thing. Okay, follow the process, do the right thing for your customer. You'll definitely be able to pass the secret shop. Understand all those rules and why that are out there, and then just use them to your advantage. Okay, just it'll save your butt. The scope of appointment, gotta have one. Okay, I know that early on in the COVID-19, they did relax that a bit, where they would let you do it over the phone, and when the customer agreed, you would write in on the customer's signature verbal authorization. I think they've pretty much got that out of the way where you don't have to do that. Everybody will do an electronic one these days, where one is either emailed to the customer or text to the customer, depending on the technology that they're capable of. And you should be able to handle that, but get that scope of appointment. Yeah. Another favorite area of the secret shopper. Okay. Regardless of whether someone is fully eligible or not, you are legally obligated to grant them the appointment and give them the full presentation. Okay, it's going to eat up an hour of your time, but you are legally obligated by the plan and by CMS to provide them with the full presentation, even if they tell you, I don't have any A and B, or I miss helping a parent who, and they don't have it yet, or whatever. They've asked for it. You are legally obligated to provide it, and in full, right? Just because they've told you that they're shopping for somebody and they don't have A and B, and I know they're not buying it, right? They're not going to buy the plan. I have to give them the full presentation. Okay. If not, I'm just not compliant. Okay. So that's pretty much what I've got for you here today.